Hey friends, so good to see you guys here today. They put my clock right there. We're back online. I was out last week a little under the weather, but feeling better. And thank you for joining us again this Wednesday. The first Wednesday in November, we just finished our 11 o'clock senior adult prayer luncheon. Great weather outside, wonderful spirit inside. We have added a new video projection system. It is state-of-the-art. And so now when we sing our hymns and songs, we don't have to just sing one verse by memory, the one we all know. We've got a video projection that helps us. So man, we sang, it was just filled that room with beautiful music. We're so grateful today. A new hymn, Brother Nick sang, Pastor Nick sang a wonderful new hymn. It's in our hymn book, our latest hymn book, but it's not one of those that we are familiar with, but it had powerful words of thanksgiving and praise. And so just a good day. Thank you for joining us. Let's look at our prayer list. In the hospital, outpatient knee replacement surgery. Bobby Bowden had that today. I guess he may spend the night, may come home. It's crazy today what outpatient surgery involves, the scope of it. A full knee replacement can be an outpatient procedure today, where when I started ministry, man, that's 5 days in the hospitals kind of thing, maybe 3.5 days if everything went perfectly well. Today, have it in the morning and go home that afternoon. So pray for Bobby as he recovers. Also, we want to remember the family of Bubba Walker, Miss Maxine Walker. Her son, Bubba, passed away. To Maxine and Earl Lloyd and her son and daughter were strong, faithful members of this church. Brother Earl passed away some years ago, and now her son Bubba Walker passed away. He had cancer, only 58 years old, but Bubba was a bright soul. He was a minister and loved children and youth ministry. So his visitation is tonight, Wednesday, November the 3rd at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock at Riverwood Family Services there at Riverwood. And then tomorrow the service will be at 2 o'clock, and they will have a 1-hour visitation, 1 hour prior at 1 o'clock. So tomorrow, 1 o'clock visitation and 2 o'clock service. The graveside will be there at Riverwood. All that is at Riverwood Family Services there at the chapel there. So remember them. Also, Mr. Marvin Taylor passed away. Many of you will know him through the church building ministries. Joe Brewer founded that ministry. And so Brother Joe passed away some years ago. Now his right-hand man who took over and was the president of that ministry has passed away. He was a faithful member of First Baptist Summit. So remember the Taylor family. Also, Miss Martha Crowell from North Mississippi passed away. Her husband was a long time director of missions in the association up there. And so you remember that family as well. Also, Brother Sam Varghese's mom is not doing well. She's has not been responsive, not eating or drinking anything. And Brother Sam is trying to get over there. International travel is very difficult today, but he's going to try to take an early flight out Tuesday, hoping to be with his family there. His mother's in her early 90s. And so pray for Brother Sam, that whole trip from leaving your home to arriving there, if everything goes perfectly, is a 40-hour trip. That is a long, long trip, almost 2 full days to travel and get over there. So pray for Brother Sam next week. And so also a dear lady in our community, a faithful dear lady, Miss Martha Lofton, passed away. Many of you will know her. Her husband, Fleet Lofton, had passed away some years ago. Her daughter, Michelle Mangold. Some of y'all will know her. Miss Martha was such an encourager, and she was an encourager to me. I was not her pastor. She was faithful, a member of another church, but she just was that way. That was just her nature, to be an encourager. She was a wonderful follower of Christ. So you pray for the Martha Lofton family. So many others. Brother Jimmy Montgomery. We've been praying for him. He's been battling a recurrence of cancer, and the chemotherapy is not as effective this time as it was before. And so he's dealing with some discomfort. And while we mention him, also remember folks like Geraldine Chandler and Brittany Rushing, Bobby Wynn. Bobby was there at 11 o'clock. Teresa Coleman, Dennis and David and Byron and Cindy Goff and Mickey. Mickey was there at 11 o'clock. Susan Chapman, Jeff, Madeline King, a teenager, Bailey and Kimberly. These are folks that deal with cancer. Some are in remission. Some take like a maintenance chemotherapy to stay in remission. Their cancer is just a more aggressive cancer, and they just have to stay on medicine, but they can function. But they do so with a heavier load than the rest of us carry. So remember them, pray for them. Allie Brooke West, our young elementary, she may still be a preschooler, or she may already be in elementary school by now. But anyway, a young child waiting her third open heart surgery. So that's going to be done in Houston, Texas, with the same surgeon that did it in Jackson some years ago. They'll be traveling to Houston. So that's coming up in the next couple weeks. So, well, maybe in the next, within 2 weeks. So pray for them, Brother John Gray, Brother Roy Roberts, Katie Lee. Katie Lee is, well, I guess you would know her probably best. Pam Lee, that family, as well as our brother Terry. That's their niece, is Tim's daughter. The Lee family is known here. Coleman Lee, Laverne Lee, who both of them have passed away. But Katie Lee has a congenital issue. All the children, her siblings, had the same thing. They grow tumors. They're benign tumors, but these tumors unfortunately impact the rest of the body's functioning. And she has tumors in her eye this time. She lost vision in one eye. She's going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to a oncology specialist in eye surgery. So pray for her. They're trying to keep as much vision as they can. So remember, Katie's probably in her 20s, maybe early 30s, I don't know, just a young adult, has battled with courage and faith, had all those children, her siblings and herself, had multiple surgeries over their lifetime. And just dear, dear, wonderful people. So you pray for Katie Lee. Miss Virginia Thompson is doing well. I had a wonderful visit with her a couple of weeks ago or so. So pray for her. Lake Hudson, Sandy's grandson, has a growth on his skull and goes to a specialist. They hope they're just going to rule it out so they don't do anything. It's a benign situation. But pray for Lake Hudson. And there's so many others. Ruben and Mitkiff, my father and mother, thank you for remembering them in prayer, your prayers. Caretaking and Parkinson's and all of those things and sitters. Thankfully, they work through all of those issues, but it's not an easy situation. But they do so with joy, and things always come up. It's just the way life is. So thank you for praying for them and remembering them. Dad is doing pretty good, and we're grateful for that. Also, Brother Dale Wilson deals with a chronic issue of neuropathy in his feet, so it's hard for him, since he can't feel easily, he's subject to fall, and then that creates other issues. Continue to remember our brother David Doty. So many of our folks here that we want to do. Sasha King continues to progress and do better. Just really remarkable. She had a serious surgery, an odd, kind of rare tumor in her spine and had to have like spinal surgery, and then she had to learn to walk again, and all of that, all as a young, well, she's probably in her later teens now, as probably a junior in high school, sophomore, junior in high school. And so now she's walking around doing well, but it kind of stopped the train there for a while, right in the middle of her adolescence here. So pray for her, but she's doing better. We'll pray that she's able to do the things that she wants to do and enjoy doing in the months and years to come. Also, our brother Keith Allred. Remember Keith and Dale Allred. We need to lift them up in our prayers. Kenneth and Carolyn Frazier in the Wesson community. Kenneth has had a number of really serious issues, and Carolyn's the caretaker. And so just remember these dear folks. And so Sylvia Phillips is transitioning to the Jackson community, bought a house up there, and to be closer to one of her children and their family. And of course, we'll miss Sylvia being in our community. Just faithful, dear faithful member, and raised her family here and the children here at First Baptist Church. Remember Brother Dwight Trim lifting up. He has chronic lung issues, which make other issues. But remember him and his wife, Kathy. Kathy's the primary caregiver. Again, we just need to find a way to help and lift. It can be a meal, a prayer, a call, an encouraging word, helping if they need care in the yard, or just between church members and neighbors, and of course their own family members. But in these times, if everybody just does what they can do and offers a gift of time or resources, it helps lift the burden of that. But also don't forget the spiritual importance. The one who gives the most help is God himself. And he calls us to pray for one another. So that's what we want to do. And then our missionaries, we want to lift them up. Also, Bertille Johnson is transitioning today to Madison, Alabama. The move is going on today. It's a beautiful day to do it. But we sure are going to missing her. Judy Yarborough has already made her transition over to Georgia, Statesboro, Georgia. We'll miss these fine dear folks. Also, Janie Cooley is going to have surgery on her elbow and wrist, and that's coming up tomorrow. So remember Janie Cooley. And so lift her up today. And so Billy and Shirley Nash, remember them. They kind of homebound folks. Miss Helen Hoggett, another one. And Larry, her son, who's her primary caregiver. Harold Gary was here today, but Jetty was not able to come. So remember Harold and Jetty, and so many others like Susan Diamond. Susan's been doing pretty good, but she deals with a chronic issue of health concerns and multiple concerns. And folks like Jane Johnson at home. Jane's such a dear soul, but has been homebound for some years now. So then our missionaries, also remember our expectant moms, Lauren Horton, and Hannah Allen Helmstetter, those in our military service, our military veterans, those in our special care facilities. I appreciate the fact that at Aspen, there's a self-assisted situation where they live there and can come and go if possible. And Judge Kenneth Warren was at our church service the last 2 Sundays. So that's incredible. Of course, remember him as he remembers his dear wife who passed away just a few weeks ago. But it's good to see that he's out worshiping with us. Also, remember those that we remember on our list, as well as those in your heart that do not know the Lord. What a joy and privilege it is to share the gospel with people, to share your testimony with people, and as well as those who struggle with addiction. Now, on the back of our prayer service, we have a full schedule, and tonight, our place will be filled with hundreds and hundreds of children and youth and workers and adults. And we're just so grateful for that, to be able to, things are better on the pandemic scale in our state. We're almost back down to the levels that we enjoyed in the end of May and through June. which were at really, really low levels. And I say that in the sense of hospitalization, those who had COVID and had to be hospitalized. Well, we're now slowly but surely going down to that level. And so we don't hear in our community as much transmission, hospitalization, those type things, which are good. Hopefully, with care and using all the tools that we can have access to, and with God's guidance in your physical doctor, the doctor you trust that takes care of your health, we can use all of these tools available, and we can move on through this global pandemic. And so things are looking up, and we're so grateful for that. And so, but we have all kind of things coming up. Tomorrow's our last day for the garage sale bus barn drop off from 11:30 to 1. That's tomorrow, November the 4th, at our bus barn. So if you've got small items, drop those off. And then if you have larger items, next week, starting Sunday afternoon through Friday, you can come to the Cherokee Street, our back entrance where our Family Life Center and gym is, that entrance. If you've got furniture or appliances you want to put in the garage sale, all this money goes to help fund India pastors through the Agape Outreach India Missions ministry of Dr. Sam and Jesse Varghese. Over 50 India pastors, those churches, they have other facilities that help support those ministries, a training and conference center. All of that has been developed over the last 20 plus years through Agape Outreach Ministry. And so it is I've had the privilege of going over there and seeing it in action and doing some training for pastors and families. It's such a privilege some years ago. And things are difficult now. This COVID plus more persecution against Christians, but yet these pastors are faithful. So we want to do everything we can to support them. So we'll take financial donations, but also you can benefit by clearing out your garage and bringing it over here. We'll have a garage sale over here, and you don't need it. They need it, and someone's going to benefit by buying it, and then that benefit will go on to help the India pastors. And then, of course, Friday, remember Dr. Red Michael's memorial service, 2 o'clock at Wright and Ferguson in Flowood, Mississippi. Dr. Michael was a longtime pastor of our church in the late 60s and through the 70s, the entire decade of the 70s. God used him in a mighty way and continued to use him up in Nashville, Tennessee, and such a wonderful and gracious Christian gentleman. To me, anytime he was in town, he was such an encourager, such a kind statesman, and we will celebrate his life up at Flowood this Friday. A lot of stuff going next Monday. Let me just mention this. Some of you may impact you. You know someone. Our Widows to Widows ministry has its first inaugural meeting, the first meeting, next Monday in our fellowship hall, starting at 10 o'clock. It'll end up about 11:30. There'll be some dessert and coffee, cake and coffee, and it's a meet and greet. This ministry, Widows to Widows, kind of takes up what Paul wrote to the Corinthians. Minister to one another with the comfort that God of all comfort has given to you. So you've been comforted in your times of trouble and crisis, and then use that experience to comfort someone else. That's really at the heart of Widows to Widows ministry. They'll have some resources and things like that to talk about, but really this is getting to know one another as widows. And someone who's been further down the journey can help another Christian widow, or also if you know someone who's recently lost their husband, this is an opportunity to minister to them. Widows helping widows, ministering. So it's an encouraging ministry. And so you'll want to be a part of that if that applies to you, or maybe you know someone. That'll be next Monday in our fellowship hall, 10 o'clock it begins. So a lot of stuff going on, and we're grateful to have those opportunities. Well, let me give you just a word from God's Word before I close out. We've been in our series, Studying Servanthood, our key resources, Dr. Charles Swindoll's book, Improving Your Serve. And he reminds us that the Scripture teaches us there are perils in servanthood. And we have to be aware of these areas where the pride can come up in our heart, circumstances during being a true servant for Christ, serving others in Jesus' name, can have its own perils. And we talked about the last time we met about the idea of becoming possessive of ministry and putting up walls and gates, kind of the old idea of it's us four and no more. And sometimes when you're in the early part of ministry, and maybe you're a charter ministry member, and but you've been a servant. You weren't maybe the founder or the leader, but you were a chief servant in it. And sometimes we become protective of this ministry. And we need to realize ministry is for the Lord. It's ultimately for the Lord, and we do it through helping other people to give glory to Him. And so the story of the prophet Elisha and his chief servant Gehazi is found in 2 Kings chapter 4. And so we talked about how Gehazi really struggled as a servant. And he unfortunately is caught up in some of these perils of servanthood. Today I want to talk about the idea of feeling used and unappreciated. Now, of course, we're serving the Lord, and we do it freely with no obligation, but sometimes pride will come in. The old nemesis of that old nature will rise up. And the story is told in 2 Kings chapter 4. As we continue the story, you remember Elisha would pass often by a village called Shunem. And there was a Shunammite woman and her husband. Remember, they really cared for the prophet Elisha and his servant. In fact, so much they made a prophet's chamber on the top floor of their house and said, hey, we're going to dedicate that room. Anytime you pass this way, you need to spend the night. You need a respite from the heat. You've got a room dedicated just for you. And they put a bed up there, a table, a lamp, a chair, and said you could just come and get away and get you some rest as you pass through our region. Well, he wanted to do something for them, and he asked, what can I do? He kind of got a word from his servant Gehazi and said, well, you know, they don't need much, but they don't have a child. They've been barren. He said, God will give them a child, and indeed gave him a son. The son got ill as he grew and was out in the field helping his father, had a tremendous pain in his head, and the son died in his mother's arms. She puts the son up in the prophet's chamber, on the bed, the prophet's bed. She gets together some animals and servants and said, we've got to go see the prophet. Well, the story picks up in verse 26. As she's coming with these servants, Elisha sees her coming. He asks the question, what in the world is wrong? Why would she be coming with this caravan of folks coming to see me? And it looks like she's kicking up a lot of dust on the way here. So he says to Gehazi, he says, go find out. Verse 26, please run now to meet her and say to her, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child? Well, that's exactly what Gehazi did. When he asked that, the Shunammite woman said, it's fine. And she just raced right passed him by. Because she wasn't there to see the servant, Gehazi. She wanted to see the prophet. She didn't want to see the chief of staff. She wanted to see the president. And she just said, it is fine. She just passed him by. And she went and begged Elisha and told him that her son had died. And could he please do something to revive her son? Here's where the story gets kind of interesting. Elisha then turns to his servant, who probably feels, hey, I've been ignored here. She said everything was fine, and then it's not really fine. She just wanted to see you and didn't want to give me the time of day. But the prophet Elisha tells his servant Gehazi, here, take my staff and go put it on the child, and gives him specific instructions. So he goes ahead, and Elisha and the Shunammite woman and the servants, they follow in behind him. So Gehazi does exactly what Elisha, the prophet, told him. He puts the staff on the son's face. And guess what happened? Nothing. Nothing happens. Then Elisha comes, and Elisha enters the room by himself and says, okay, just let me be. So Gehazi is not there in the room, sent out, and I won't go into all the details, but Elisha revives in the power of God the child. The son lives. And the Shunammite woman falls at the feet of Elisha, the prophet, with appreciation. So here you have Gehazi, the servant, does everything he's been told to do, not a thank you, not a we appreciate what you did. You've been running back and forth doing what I've told you to do, and yet he is overlooked. And then the story continues. Turns out there's a famine in the land. When Elisha gets back to Gilgal, the sons of the prophets. So here are well-known people. Their fathers were prophets, and they're prophets, and the people were to take care of the prophets. But there's a famine in the land. There's hardly enough food for them to feed their own family, much less the local prophets. And so they come to Elisha, who is the main prophet of the land, and said, we need some food. We need something to eat. Elisha tells Gehazi in verse 38 of chapter 4, hey, fix a pot of stew. And, it's kind of like us, pick a big old thing of gumbo, or a big old pan of a pot of soup. If there's more people that come, add another can of tomatoes, some more salt and pepper, and add a little more water. Just make more soup. Well, he does that. He goes out, he finds this vine with these gourds and says, wow, this will go a long way. Let's put that in the stew. Unbeknownst to him, the gourds were poisonous. So as these sons of the prophets begin eating the stew, they cry out, there's death in the stew. They get sick. Elisha runs to the rescue again, gets some meal, throws it in the stew, stirs it in. It neutralizes the poison. They're all able to eat. They get their fill. They're satisfied, and their health is restored. And did anybody say any appreciation for all the work that Gehazi did? No. Here it looks like he's at fault, when all he did was do exactly what he was asked to do. So here's my point. You can, even if you've been faithfully serving the Lord behind the scenes, if you're not careful, when you don't get appreciated publicly or thanked publicly, your old pride can rise up. It's still there. It's not in control. You've been saved by Christ. He's giving you a new mind, a new spirit, and yet you can feel the old feel. But hear this verse from Hebrews 6:10, my dear friend. You're working behind the scenes. Hear this. Hebrews 6:10. For God is not unjust to forget your work and labor of love, which you have shown toward his name, in that you have ministered to the saints and do minister. Your continuing service, remember this, God sees. If no one else sees it, God sees. If people overlook your service, God hasn't overlooked your service. You keep serving in Jesus' name. It's all for his glory and credit. But hear this, God rewards those who diligently serve him and seek him. You just keep serving. Don't worry about the thanks. And by the way, this has been Pastor Appreciation for all of our pastors on staff. This church goes out of its way, both formally as a church through a committee, and very generous and kind toward us, but also many of our members reach out to our pastors. You've done that to Terry and me, and I want to thank you. So kind, and we appreciate, love you guys. Let's serve well. Let's not worry about where the credit goes. The credit goes all to Jesus. God love you. Have a great week. We look forward to seeing you soon.